In this video, I'm going to walk you through the settings in Zoom. It's going to take a few minutes. I'm going to read everything to you so that you can be working on your settings and scrolling through and clicking while you hear me talking you through it, so that you don't have to actually view the video, but just hear it. It's going to be, like I said, a few minutes, but it will be time well spent if any of these settings need changing for you. To start, go to zoom.us, and you'll hear me say this over and over again, but make sure when you click this sign in, do not immediately type in your email address and password. First, scroll down to the sign in with Google button, and then if it asks you to do that, you can. But again, it's likely that if you've signed in here before, that it will take you directly to Zoom. So the first thing you want to do is go down to settings, and it's at this point, once you reach the settings, you can stop watching this video and just listen to it. I'm going to start at the very top with waiting room. Inside, if you want to use the waiting room, I would recommend using it at the beginning of the school year so that students understand that they can't simply bounce from room to room or from Zoom to Zoom. If though you either don't want to use it or you want to stop using it at some point, you can always come back in here and turn it off. For now, I'm going to leave it on. One of the things that you can do, and this is it's one thing I really like, based on my position, is I can turn on the waiting room, but I can set options so that if I click edit options, who should go in the waiting room? At first, maybe everyone, but for me, I only want people to go into the waiting room if they're not in our account. So I've checked users not in your account, and that way teachers, if you guys are logged in to your school account and try to get into my Zoom, you won't need to wait. And that's something that I would suggest you do with your students. So the students will be able to jump right into your Zooms, but outsiders would have to go to the waiting room first. Who can admit participants from the waiting room? I have checked host and co-hosts only. That way, if you do have co-hosts or co-teachers, they will be able to attend to the waiting room as well, not just you. You could check the other box, host, co-host, and anyone who bypassed the waiting room, but that will obviously give that power to students as well, which you might not want to give to them. All right, I'm going to either continue or cancel out of that. There are also ways you can customize the waiting room. I didn't spend any time doing that, but if you want to toss a logo in there, you can. I'm going to scroll down, require a passcode when scheduling new meetings. I just decided to abandon all passcodes. So when I create a meeting, if someone tries to get in who's not from Westwood, they'll go to the waiting room, and I can choose to ignore them. But I figured I do not want everyone to have to either keep track of a passcode. I certainly don't want to have to send it out all the time. So I turned that off. Require a passcode for instant meetings, also off. Off, all the things that say passcode I turned off. Embed a passcode in invite link for one-click join. Even though I don't use any passcodes, I went ahead and turned that on. I don't think it'll ever be relevant since I don't have passcodes, but I figured, why not? Require a passcode for participants joining by phone. I did turn this on. I don't think it's going to be a big deal because I don't think many people will try to get in from phones. But just in case they do, I figured I'm going to make you have a passcode. Only authenticated users can join meetings. I have that turned off, but that might be something we need to turn on if you ever want to schedule breakout rooms. If you want to pre-create breakout rooms, I think authenticated users are the key, and so we might need to turn that on. That said, no one has been able to explain to me what makes a user authenticated. So I'm leaving these off because I don't know what it is yet. So only anything that says only authenticated users, I turned off. So now we're down to schedule meeting. I like to have my video off when I start a meeting, so I've turned that first thing off. Participants video, hey, I want you to turn your video on. So I turned that setting on. Very hypocritical. I'm okay with that. You might want to do that with your students. You can choose to turn your video on or off when you start a meeting, and you can also choose to have your students' videos on or off when they start the meeting. Any of you can immediately change the status of your video after you join the meeting. Audio type, telephone and computer audio, just in case people do need to call in. Join before host, this is a big one. Turn that off. You do not want your students to be able to join a meeting before you get there. The next 5 I have turned on. Anything that says personal meeting ID, turned on. Scheduling a meeting, turned on. Instant meetings, turned on. Mute participants upon entry, on. I do not want to hear whatever's happening in someone's house as soon as they enter a meeting. And then I don't know what this does, but upcoming meeting reminder, I turned it on. I don't really schedule Zoom meetings, so I don't know if I would get some sort of reminder, but I assume that you do. Now we've reached the in-meeting basic options. Require encryption, off. Chat, I've turned that on. You can leave it on or off depending on how you want to run your classes. If you turn it on, I do suggest that you check that box that says prevent participants from saving chat. Who knows what kids will do with that, but I have left that off, but I would say that as a teacher, I would check that box. Private chat, again, this I think is a big one. I would turn private chatting off. Even if you keep chatting on, your students can send messages to everyone, but they cannot send private chats unless you check this box. So I'm going to say, don't let your kids send private chats, because they will spend the entire Zoom sending private chats to each other and not paying attention to the content or to you. Auto-saving chats, I turn that on. If you're using the Zoom chat as an attendance tracker, you definitely want to auto-save your chats, and those chats will go into a folder on your MacBook that you can go find later. But auto-saving chats I turned on. Sound notification when someone joins or leaves, turn that on. Who you play the sound for is up to you. I play the sound just for hosts, but maybe you want to turn that sound on for everyone so that whenever someone joins the room, or even joins the waiting room, your computer will ding. I absolutely would ignore the people joining the waiting room unless I heard that ding. So I turn those sound notifications on. When someone joins by phone, I also check this box. Ask them to record their voice to use as the notification. So that basically means if someone tries to call into your Zoom, they'll be asked to say their name, and they'll say, Johnny from block 3, and then you get to hear that before you choose to admit them into the room. File transfer. I don't think we'll be doing this much in Zoom, but I turned that on just in case we ever say, okay, go ahead and share this file through the Zoom. And I didn't bother with the only allow specific specified file types. I left that empty. Feedback to Zoom, turned it off. Display end of meeting experience feedback survey, turned that off. I don't care about my students or my own feedback about Zoom itself. Co-host, I turned that on just in case you want to have other people co-host the meeting with you. You can enable that in each meeting, but it's nice to have that option. Polling, turned it on just in case you want to ask your attendees a question. This will also allow you to display the results of the poll to your students. Always show meeting control toolbar. I have that on. That's personal. If you want that control, I like having that control bar and knowing that I'll always see it. Otherwise, it will disappear, and I have to move my mouse a certain way to get it to reappear. I don't need that, so I keep the control bar toolbar on. Show Zoom windows during screen share. Yes, that will show webcams, chat. It will keep all those things open even while you're screen sharing, so yes. And then of course screen sharing, I turned that on. Who can share? I think that in my meetings, I want anyone to be able to share. Of course, with technology, I need to be able to see other people's screens. So I want all participants to be able to share. As a teacher, you might be able to predict that you will or will not want to enable other people to share. So that's entirely up to you. Who can start sharing when someone else is sharing? I have my host only for this, but there might be times when you want all participants to be able to share their screens. So you can always check that, all participants. And then you could theoretically have a bunch of students sharing their screens at the same time. Something that might be at least worth trying out. All right. Disable desktop screen share for users. I have that unchecked. So this is a little bit of a double negative. But do you want to disable desktop and screen share for users? No, I do not want to disable that. So I turned that off. Annotation I have turned on. Allow saving of shared screens with annotation. I hit yes. Only the user who is sharing can annotate. If you turn annotation on, check that box. Only the user who is sharing can annotate. The reason for that, while it might be interesting to have one person sharing their screen and other people annotating that screen, all these annotations are anonymous. So if you start seeing the letter F being written as an annotation across the screen, guess what? You have no idea who's doing that, and you don't know what the next letter will be. So I check that box that says only the user who is sharing can annotate. That way you at least know who is doing the annotations. Whiteboard, yes. Allow saving of whiteboard content, yes. Allow save whiteboard content when sharing is stopped, yes. I save this as a PNG, that's a picture file. You can save it as PDF if you like. Remote control, there's something in the back of my mind that's telling me that remote control has to be off. I think that is for something to do with breakout rooms, or I can't remember exactly, but I think that remote control needs to be off. Nonverbal feedback, I turned that on. I think it creates some of those buttons that allow people to hold up their hand or thumbs up or clap. So I said, sure, nonverbal feedback, yes. Meeting reactions, same thing. I think those are connected. So I said yes to meeting reactions. Allow removed participants to rejoin. I hit yes for this. This is interesting. If you remove a participant for some reason, by default, I think Zoom says, okay, you removed that participant, so you obviously never want that person to come back in, which is generally going to be true. However, if you accidentally remove someone, that person will never be able to rejoin. So I say yes, allow removed participants to rejoin, so that if you accidentally do it, that person will still be able to get back in. But if you find that that's causing a problem, just come back in here and change that setting. But for now, I said yes. Allow participants to rename themselves. I said no, but there are some reasons to allow participants to rename themselves. For instance, if you have a student who does not go by their official school name, you might want to let them type in the name that they would like to use. I've also been in meetings where people wanted to be able to type in their pronouns next to their name. So this is a way for you to do that. So you can allow participants to rename themselves. Of course, it also opens a can of worms. So that's up to you, whatever you want to do here. Hide participant profile pictures in a meeting. I said no. I like seeing their profile pictures if they're not using their webcam. So I left that off. All right, in meetings advanced. Report participants to Zoom. I put yes, host can report meeting participants for inappropriate behavior. That will obviously be rare and only if it's someone probably outside of Westwood. So I don't think we'll run into that, but just in case I left that on. Breakout rooms, another big one. Yes, we want to be able to use breakout rooms. Even if you don't end up using them, you want the option. Allow host to assign participants to breakout rooms when scheduling. I checked that box. Again, I'm not sure exactly how that works. We had trouble with it over the summer, but if we can figure out how to do it, we do want to have this ability, so I checked that box. Remote support. This might be where the remote support needed to be off. So I turned remote support off, along with the next several. Closed captioning. You might have a good reason to use closed captioning with your students, and if that's the case, you can turn this on. I figured I typically won't need closed captioning, and I'm assuming that it's going to make my computer work a lot harder, so I turned it off. And then, of course, since I'm not using closed captioning, I turned off save captions. Language interpretation is off. Far end camera control I turned off. Virtual backgrounds. Our students can't do virtual backgrounds on their Chromebooks, at least not at this time. So you can turn that off unless you want to use a virtual background. And if you plan on using a virtual background, you can turn that on. Video filters. No idea what this is. It's on mine. I could probably just turn it off, which I think I'm going to do right now. So I don't know what video filters are, and I'm not using them. Identify guest participants in the meeting webinar. I would turn that on, but I don't know what that does. And on mine it was off, and I haven't run into any trouble. I'm going to turn it on and see what happens. Auto answer group and chat, no. Only show default email when sending email invites, no. No, 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 I have no. All the way down to show a join from your browser link. I've turned that on so that people can join from their browser if they want to. Allow live streaming meetings, I turned that off. Request permission to unmute, I turned that off. So this is an interesting one. Select this option in the scheduler to request permission to unmute meeting participants and webinar panelists. Permission once given will apply in all meetings scheduled by the same person. So one of the safeguards in Zoom is a host cannot unmute an attendee. That is because, let's say I'm in a meeting that you are running, and during that meeting, one of my kids runs into the room and starts screaming profanity at me. Well, I am going to mute my microphone. If you can just unmute me, and you think, hey, I have a question for Jesse. Jesse, answer this question, and you click unmute, and my child is still screaming profanities at me, you are now in my living room with me hearing that. I don't want that power as a host. I want other people to unmute themselves if they want to. You might find that you need to change that and request permission from your students to unmute them whenever you want. I think our kids can handle muting and unmuting if they are sitting at their computer. So I don't think we need to do that, but that's entirely up to you. I just wanted to give you the most extreme example of when you might not want that power. Email notification, sure. I have all of these checked off as yes until the last one, which says when the cloud recording is going to be permanently deleted from the trash. I don't care. I don't know what that is. So now we're down to other. And these I find to not be particularly critical, so I'm just going to scroll past them. And then at the very bottom, there's a regenerate button. I do not think we'll ever need to click that, which brings us to the very end of our settings. Congratulations. You hopefully will never have to do this again.